My name is Brian with Double Haven Brewing Company. We are a local craft beer manufacturer here in Photon. Our brewery is actually located right across the street, right across Oakview 1 Street, in the One Way Industrial Center. Just to give you a little bit of history of our brand, so what we emphasize on is embracing the outdoor activities, embracing eco-friendliness and sustainability, as well as just really being as sustainable as possible. And that was pretty much our ethos. So to introduce our team, it is Scott and Lee Powering and myself. Lee is from born and raised in Taiwan. Scott is from California and I'm from Texas. Scott and Lee have been out here for a little bit more than a decade, and I've been out here for about 3 years. We started the brewery about 3 years ago, and we did large-scale manufacturing and OEM manufacturing for other brands here in Hong Kong as well as around Asia, before launching our own brand. And when we launched our own brand, we launched with Dragon Water. So Dragon Water is a spiked seltzer. If you guys aren't familiar with spiked seltzers, what we do is we take natural cane sugar. We will then add a lot of water to that natural cane sugar and we'll boil that for just a short amount of time. After we're done boiling that, we add a very aggressive yeast to the sugary water blend, which that yeast eats every last bit of the sugars and converts that into alcohol. So then what we're left with is a really high alcoholic water. And what we do is we take that alcoholic water, we filter it, and then we will then add natural flavorings to it. The flavorings that we add to it, we have 4 core flavors, and then we just launched a 5th flavor. So the 4 core flavors is lemongrass and lime, black raspberry, ginger blood orange, and lemongrass and lime, and cucumber watermelon. So it's all back on the back table over there where Maggie is waiting. You can find all of our Dragon Water on this back table. The 5th flavor that we've just recently launched is a honeysuckle hibiscus, a star fruit. We try to get something very local, and it's actually a really good seller right now. Afterwards, after we launched Dragon Water, we launched our beer brand. It's called Double Haven. Double Haven was basically created because we wanted to drink beer here in Hong Kong that we like to drink. And I felt like there was a void in the market and we couldn't find beer that we really wanted to drink. So we started off with our Double Haven lager. The lagers are really clean, crisp, easy to drink beer. It is really simple. It's beer that tastes like beer. And then beer after that we launched is our Double Haven Weekender. It's a pale ale. The pale ale was brewed with a really unique yeast, really unique blend of hops that Scott and I hand selected. And it is a really bold but clean, really delicious, smooth, tropical, citrusy pale ale. We do have a number of collabs that we have done. So one of the more fun collabs that we did is we partnered up with 3 other local breweries and our hop supplier here. We partnered with Young Master, Carbon Brews, which is also a Photon-based brand and brewery, as well as Heroes, to produce the Operation Hop Drop. So what we did is we partnered up with our hop supplier in order to ship in hops that were freshly picked from the farm. It took 18 hours from the hops that were picked from the farm to get to our kettle, and we rolled that up and created one of the freshest beers in Hong Kong. So, what makes us different between the macro beers and the craft beer? Craft beer, what we have done is we adhere by the German purity laws called Reinheitsgebot, and we only use 4 ingredients in our beer. So macro beers, similar to Qingtao, Blue Girl, and Carlsberg, they'll use adjuncts. So they'll use rice, sugar, and corn to add extra fermentability into their beer, but that deteriorates their product. So what we do is we adhere to the Reinheitsgebot, which only includes 4 ingredients, which would be water, malt, hops, and yeast. Scott, Lee, and myself, we have traveled around the world to source all of the freshest ingredients that we can. So behind me you'll see pictures of Scott and I in Yakima, Washington, and we went from farm to farm to farm and to different manufacturers, and we hand-selected over the course of a week, hand-selected the hops that we want to use to bring into Hong Kong. We're the only brewery here in Hong Kong that has hand-selected the hops that we want to use. Afterwards, we've gone to, we bring in our malt from a variety of countries: Australia, the Netherlands, and Germany. So this is a picture of Scott and I picking the malt that we want to use that was grown in Australia. We adhere to the finest and highest ingredients. So here we wanted to pick the hops or the malt that we really wanted to use that ensures that the quality of our beer is much better than any macro beer that you can ever have. The yeast that we use is sourced from the United States as well. That is coming from Colorado, and that is air-shipped to us every couple of months. We get the freshest of yeast. And then we use, of course, Hong Kong water, and then we filter that water over 3 different stages to make sure that water is the cleanest and most pure water that we can get. So beyond the ingredients of macro beer, what really sets us apart is our team. So any other macro beer that you drink, like Carlsberg per se, they have thousands of employees. We only have 12. We have 12 employees that do everything from sales, manufacturing, scrubbing toilets, and making sure that the beer is the most precious beer that you can drink here in Hong Kong. Beyond the team, we're locally made, so we're made here in Photon, which we're really proud to do. So we actually work really closely with local Hong Kong manufacturers and producers, as well as local people here in Photon. So beyond doing this event here at Fooody, which we come to Fooody for lunch every couple of days while we're working, we also work really closely with local suppliers here. So this is a hardware store that is actually operational here in this building. They're right on Up to 1 Street. We work with them to ensure that we get really good spare parts and different items and materials that we can't get at other places. So it's actually nice to be here in Photon because they help us out quite a bit. We also work really closely with a welding shop that is across the street to make sure that our material or our equipment is properly maintained. We work with machine shops here in Photon. During COVID times, there's a mask factory in our building that we trade beer for masks. And of course, coming to local restaurants and eating establishments here as well. So I'll tell you a little bit more. So the challenges of producing beer in Hong Kong, there are many of them. One of which being space. So everything here, of course, in Hong Kong is vertical, including our equipment, including our brewery. So we actually manufacture all of our beer on the ground floor of our building, but we have a storage space on the 10th floor and offices, and additional offices and storage and a laboratory on the 16th floor of our building. Beyond just space, we also run into a number of issues because most of our raw materials are sourced from abroad. Actually, all of our raw materials are sourced from abroad. We encounter shipping delays as well as different issues bringing them into Hong Kong. So our yeast is very fresh. We get our yeast from a laboratory in Colorado that gets express airship to us. Every once in a while, we do accept or get a product of yeast that has exploded halfway through transportation. Here's a picture of yeast that has exploded and arrived to us here in Photon, but as our yeast actually leaking out down Alton 1 Street. We're actually not able to use that. So that's one of the challenges that we have to accept here in Hong Kong. Beyond material issues, another challenge that we have is just trying to convert Hong Kongers into drinking local craft beer rather than Carlsberg, rather than Qingtao, and rather than Blue Girl. So that's been a really fun and challenging something, but I feel like in the past 3 years that we've been operational, that Hong Kongers have been drinking and exploring more and more craft beer, which we're really appreciative of. Beyond that, after this, we'll actually be able to go across the street to our brewery, to our facility, and we'll give a tour, show you how we produce beer here in Hong Kong and the challenges that we do have. After that, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm able to take any questions if you have any questions now. If you don't have any questions now, we can do the tour, and then I'm sure I can answer more questions there as well. Grain is what we call grist, and it's basically this crushed grain with exposed starches. So then what we do is we add hot water to that grist to start converting those starches into sugar. We let that soak in water for a couple of hours at different temperatures to create enzymatic reactions to get that sugar. And then we separate the sugar from the solids that is left over. So what we do is now we have a really strong, sweet liquid called wort, and left over is grain. And what we do with that grain, we actually give that grain to a mushroom farmer. We also give it to a black fly farmer, and we also send it out to Oak Park, which is in Lantown, which is a composting facility. So that grain does go to a good cause afterwards. It's still viable, it's still good. It's food waste, we don't use that anymore. That sugary liquid called wort is then boiled. And then that's where we'll add the third ingredient, right? So far we have water, we have malt. The third ingredient is hops. The hops, which is actually in the family of the cannabinoid, right? So it's really closely related to an illegal substance, but it is different in the fact that all of this is provided with a bittering aspect to the beer. So the hops are then added. We continue to boil that wort, and then we send it here to the whirlpool. So this is the whirlpool vessel. It does exactly what it sounds like it does. It sends that into a whirlpool, which then any solid solution is then dropped, or any solid is dropped out of solution. So there'll be hop matter or any grain that is left over. So what we're left with now, and Scott has hops in his hand actually, and feel free to take the lid off and smell them. It's the four main ingredients. That fourth ingredient is yeast, and the yeast actually does all the work. I think Scott's gonna go grab some yeast, and you'll see what it looks like. So that yeast, we added it here, and we only add a small amount. That yeast is going to replicate and replicate and replicate and replicate, because what it's doing is it's eating all of the sugar that we've extracted. And what it does is it eats the sugar. Oh, here we go. This is the yeast. It looks like a vanilla milkshake. So what that does, it eats up all of the sugar, and it converts that sugar into alcohol and CO2. And so what you can see here, yeah, you can smell it. So when we add that yeast, it's eating all those sugars and converting it into alcohol and CO2. That alcohol, of course, that's what makes beer fun. So we keep that in the beer. The CO2, we actually vent it out into the atmosphere. So this is an actively fermenting tank here. Whoa. And that's the CO2 that's flowing out of the tank. We'll load those single pellets that you see, we'll load them up about this high into this tank, and then we circulate them in these tanks to get that really nice floral, really nice citrusy, really nice fruity aspect of the beer. We'll let that go for a day. Afterwards, we drop the temperature down. So we can control the temperature of every single tank here, and we drop it down to 0 degrees Celsius. Once it's at 0 degrees Celsius, any solid matter left in the beer will drop out of solution. That's why these tanks have a cone on the bottom, so they're cylindrical. That way we can just dump off any of the remaining yeast on the beer and any of the remaining hops. Once we dump that off, we actually do something that's really cool. We are the only brewery in the region that has what we have is a centrifuge. In the United States, in the brewing industry for 10 years, and in those 10 years, every single brewery that manufactured beer in bottles started putting it in cans. When you go to the United States or Europe, most craft beer is in cans now. Like 90% are in cans. It's so much better for the beer. And here in Hong Kong, where space is at a premium, I can fit 100 cases of cans on one pallet and only 56 cases of bottles on a pallet. So this makes a lot more economical sense for us to use cans. Anyway, that's the whole process. We do cans here, bottles on the other end, and if you're drinking beer that is coming off a draft from the keg, we fill the keg straight from the tank as well. So that's the whole process. That's brewing in Hong Kong.